Okay. We're in the midst of discussing different halachos of Pesach, and we're dealing with baking of the matzahs and what's incumbent on a person to take care of. Now, we said that you're supposed to watch over the matzahs and make sure they're kosher. So there are different questions what you have to check for. We mentioned before, kfulos, if they're doubled up, it could be problematic. But how far does the checking go? For example, when it comes to an animal, there's what's called a bedikas pnim, to check the lungs, that there's no sirchis, there's no lesions. That has to be done. But you don't have to go and check every little part of the anatomy of the animal, because you don't have to be chayshish. It doesn't usually happen. So he brings down here, bedikas matzah shalonu luchutim nimshachim. What will be the halacha for our kind of matzahs, meaning our thin matzahs? We use thin matzahs. Not everybody uses thin matzahs. There are a lot of, by the Sfardim, by the Teimanim, that they use what's called falafel matzahs. Not falafel matzahs, what is pita matzahs? Pita. You can get a soft matzah. We can ask him, he'll tell us. You ever hear of pita matzahs? See, they know about it. We go ahead and we take the matzahs, we make it thin, and we put holes into it that it shouldn't blow up, but they don't have that problem. It doesn't say any place that you have to have these type of matzahs. Technically, if they bake within 18 minutes, have a good day, and it's okay. Well, we do, but we don't do it that way. So the question is, what do you have to suspect and what don't you have to suspect? So it says over here, Medina ein tzarech livdoig matzah shalonu shleichutim shachim imenu. You don't have to check. Of course, if you find that a matzah is half raw, it's problematic. It has to be fully baked for that period of time. So you don't have to go and check. Oh, maybe let's pull it a little bit. And then, of course, it breaks. You don't have to worry about that. It's something that doesn't usually happen. So since it's something that's not in the norm, the halacha is that you don't have to check for it. Now, how does he come about this halacha? Because the Mechaber writes in Siman Tov Samach Aleph Sif Gimel, Matzah shenefes ad shem parsem oiser chutin imshachim imena. Matzah that's fully baked, that if you're going to go ahead and break it, the matzah will not, how would you say it, when you have those strings pulling? Stretch. The strings are not stretching. It's considered fully baked, and you can use it. V'achroinim kosfu. This is the Chok Yaakov. Sha'ofen livdik hamatzis hu al yidei shetoicha v'tzboi toich hamatzah. What you do is you, because if you're going to go ahead and break it, it's a broken matzah. You stick your finger into the matzah, kishichama, while it's still hot. V'royim niddak bo isa. See if there is you can see that it bends a little bit, so you know it's problematic. You don't have strings stretching out from the matzahs. But you should know, truth be told, there's one day when there's a problem in the matzahs bakeries. and that's on Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach is Mochama, but still, you have to realize that people don't realize it here in Boston, but matzahs that you bake on Erev Pesach is worth its weight in gold, or in matzahs, because people pay sometimes $8, $10, $12 per matzah. So the people that are baking in the matzah bakery, the one who's wants to get as many matzahs in, so he should be able to make a nice profit, because though the Erev Pesach matzahs is worth maybe 3, 4, 5 times as much as a regular, even though now it's so expensive. They make a joke about matzahs that it's called lechem oini. Lechem oini. So there's different. The Chazal says oinim by dvarim, or because of oini that they were bread of affliction. But lechem oini can also mean bread of poorness. Oini, aniyim. Why is it bread of poorness? Because after you pay for the matzahs, you're ready to go to the poorhouse. But these matzahs are even more expensive. So v'oidai chaznish kosef the b'matzah shalonu shem rikikim dakim. The Chaznish writes it as well in plain Hebrew, that matzahs that are very, very thin, like our matzahs are thin matzahs. They're quote unquote, they're like crackers. Im nechozim b'mada ubiyad ve'in nekfelis v'adin chutim shachim mimena. If they're grabbed by the marder is the, how would you call that thing that you put in to take out the matzahs in English?
Paddle?
Huh?
No, it's a pizza paddle?
No.
It's when you have an oven, you won't put things inside the oven to get it out.
Not to take it out. It's that flat piece, that flat item that takes out the matzahs.
The steel? Pizza? The steel? It's like a steel, like a pizza pie also. Yeah, it's like a... It's called a peel. Yeah, peel.
A peel. It's a peel? Okay, it's called a peel, okay. We call it a marda. If you get it out, you can be pretty sure that it was baked enough. If you move the matzah with your hand and it doesn't become crumbly, that it's not going to have any chutim. Usually, when you have a hot matzah that has it's soft, it'll bend a little bit, so you don't have to worry about it. However, that's regarding the string stretching. So that you can take on, it's not a problem. However, gam b'matzah shalanu, when we talk about our matzahs means usually when you think of matzah shalanu, when we say shalanu, you think of maim shalanu. Over here we're not talking about maim shalanu, we're talking about mashalanu, meaning the way we bake matzahs. We bake matzahs like thin crackers. Shem dakis ma'oid, they're very thin. Yesh lachshoish lematzos hakvulos. Then you have to worry that they might get bent over. And if it gets bent over, you can't use it. That you can see with your naked eye already. So he says, Ayin das toide sam chalev shetzide lohakol matzah shalonu shem dakis ve'ishol v'kula, that he's makel when it comes to doubled up matzahs, because ve'heim nofim yofim al pi divrei Radvaz, according to the Radvaz, meaning since it's so thin, a little bit doubled up is not going to create a problem of chametz. However, omnem steam is called psakim le'mashmachi, and you have to worry about it. By Magen Avraham, Simen Tov Nunal Shadol Inyan Reches Shaitzi Boy Matzah Kvula Sheyesh LaHachmel LeChatchila, that if you have this shovel that you take out, that you have to be machmer on it. V'hu Mishnah Berurah by Pesachim Vaydaim B'Samach. It's questionable about it. Okay. Now, Okay. Okay, this is not really, we spoke about this. Okay, here comes another thing. We have different shittas of how to, there are levels of shmira. We have shmira mishas ketzira, meaning you have shmira mishas tchina, and then you have shmira mishas lisha. Many people are machbed nowadays, especially, to have shmira mishas ketzira, but that's only from the harvesting time, not anymore. After you do the actual cutting of the wheat, and you have the wheat, you afterwards do what's called the threshing, the disha, and then you have to go ahead and take off the chaff. All this is a process. Then you have what you call the actual kernel of wheats, and you grind those kernels into flour. And over here comes the issue of what we call rechaim shel yad. Do you have to have, because you want to go ahead, until now you really didn't have an actuality to make the thing. From here on in, even though by the disha you have the same problem because it's done by machine, but they say that since it's a button that you push and you go and if you take your finger off the button, it's still considered the Shematzis mitzvah because you're holding the button the whole time. But then you have what's called grinding the kernels of wheat into flour.
It's the same thing. It's a button.
No, it's not a button. You just turn it on. I know, das verstehe ich nicht. You're right.
Some have, I think, the machine matzah, there's such a way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's a button and you hold the button.
Yeah, there's hold the button. Okay, but not everybody holds of it. But you should know there are in Eretz Yisrael where they do the disha also by hand. They do everything by hand because of this, and it's very, very expensive. Because that's a very, very meticulous type of item that you have to do. It's one thing that when you do the grinding of the wheat, they have these bicycles that they use.
Modified, yeah.
It's modified, right? Or they use these famous pictures of the Bostoner Rebbe from Borough Park where he's grinding the wheat with a big crank. A photo op, you have that? Okay, he has the photo op. So that's how it's done. My father Zatzal wasn't so makpid on rechaim shel yad. He used chashmal. He used electric, and he held that it was good enough because you put it on. However, there are those that do it in that fashion. So for regular matzahs, I try to get the first 18 minutes rush, but afterwards I try to here in Erev Pesach matzahs is rechaim shel yad from Eretz Yisrael. So he brings down over here ein tzrichim lizoy likach matzahs rechaim shel yad. Halachically, you don't have to worry about it. And this is what we'll delve into. He doesn't really explain explicitly what the problem is to do it by electric. If you use, there wasn't electric in those days. They used to use a mill that was run by water. That's how they used to do it. A water wheel. It has to do with a side reason, nothing to do with electric. It has to do that maybe by using the water wheel, drips of the water wheel will fall into the flour. When it comes to our milling, like a hiddah, there's no hiddah. We don't use. Nobody uses a water wheel today to sift their to how do you say, mill their flour, crush their flour, the wheat into flour by water wheel. Rav Shmuel Omer Da'ad Rabba. He goes the other way, and he says, "Yitochin the rechaim shel mechoine odev tvei akan varv." It's better to use a machine mill. V'nir d'rotzaloi v'dim lefnim ha'yimodaram lifcham b'chaim shel yah mishim shel b'chaim shel kito yishel shel zeya u'kedoyma shel behem chashash chametz. When you go ahead and use these items, is a problem of the zeya, a sweat, and it'll be problematic. What you use is an electric one, like a chashoshes hanal. You're not going to have any type of sweat or anything. All these reasonings. So basically he says, after everything is said and done, he feels that an electric mill is better than a rechaim shel yad. It's better. Again, the $1 million question. You're going to say it's a failed in lishma because it's not being done manually. As long as somebody is by the switch, it's okay. I am bezeh b'divrei malkiel, shas shuvas chesed avram, chazanish, mikrei kodesh, b'alich shleima, v'chein udas hashal shuvas, v'chein harili Rav Shmuel Ledina, the vadi yoytzim l'chatchila mitzvahs achilas matzah, gam b'matzahs mechoina. Even if you're going to use a mill for matzahs that is electric. About the what?
Not the baking.
Not the baking. V'dam l'das hacholkim paisim matzahs mechoina, habi mem le'posol mishum shenisha chametz v'mechoina. Oh, Metzah, it's talking about. He's talking about machine-made matzahs. Yeah, it's machine-made matzahs. This is going even a step further. But Lamaisa, even if those that say it's no good, it's because a lot of times it stays over the 18 minutes and it becomes problematic because they don't clean it out so well. But at the end of the day, it's not as simple Simon says. And therefore, it could be problematic. Okay, here comes a very, very important question. Matzahs. You go to your friendly matzah bakery. Today, there are matzah bakeries that only use shomer Torah mitzvahs for the actual baking of matzahs. I'm not saying they don't have non-Jews there. Let's say to clean the sticks or to put the sticks, they have these machines now where they sand the sticks. But that they'll use non-Jews as well. Or non-observant. But the actual making of the matzahs, many a time, the baking of the matzahs, many matzah bakeries today in the tri-state area will use only shomer Torah mitzvahs. People that are shomer Shabbos, basically. However, there are matzah bakeries that use people that are not what you call top of the line, observant Jews. So the question is that okay or not okay?
Depends on what part, right?
No, they're talking about actually creating the matzah, using the roller pin, and they'll do it They take a whole bunch of Russian ladies. Now they don't. You can't tell. They put on. Of course, they tell them to put on a tichel when they do the matzahs, whatever it is. But you can't. You don't know when they go home if they're what you call fully observant. They need the money, and they want to bake matzahs. It's a difficult job. It's not easy to work 7-8 hours a week rolling matzahs. Let me tell you that much. Just looking at them sometimes gets me tired, let alone doing it alone to go ahead. So it becomes problematic to get people to work. So there are matzah bakeries that are makbid on it, but there are some that are not. So what gives them the right, quote unquote? So it's brought down here. Yoitzim b'matzahs afilehem asukim b'matzahs. Even if it's not shoym ritari mitzvahs, any shoym ritari mitzvahs, even if they're not shoym ritari mitzvahs. Meaning, you can take that friendly Russian Jew that you know is not shoym ritari mitzvahs. Listen, most of them are tinnik shenishbas. They came from Russia, no fault of theirs, but they're not shoym ritari mitzvahs. And we know that when it comes to the Leil Seder, you need to have matzahs mitzvah, matzahs that shoym ritari mitzvahs. But you still yoitzu. Why? Because aval kaponim tzrichim lamed al gabeihem. You have to have somebody standing on top of them. What we call a mashgiach. There's always a mashgiach there at all places. Lishma sheyasar kol l'shem matzahs mitzvah. To make sure that it's done in the possible way. And a lot of times you'll notice that they announce L'shem matzahs mitzvah, and they're all supposed to say together L'shem matzahs mitzvah, right? You go to a bakery, you see that all the time. So he explains. Kosev apri megodim, muma lahachis la'akim gar tvei ma'akim. Let's say you have somebody who's a non-observant Jew, but he does it lahachis. He doesn't observe Shabbos not because it's too difficult. He's doing it because he doesn't want to satisfy the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's going to show the Rebbeinu Shalom who's the boss. They are worse than a non-Jew. The Vada Oisadat Nafshei, when he does the baking of the matzahs, you know he's not doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. But that's somebody who doesn't observe the Shabbos, because they say over the famous story of the Baditcheva, that the Baditcheva saw a Jewish person smoking on Shabbos. So he goes over to him and says, Rabbi Yid, probably you didn't want to, you forgot that it was Shabbos, that's why you're smoking. He says, no, I know it's Shabbos. So he said, oh, it must be because you forgot you're not allowed to smoke on Shabbos. He says, no, I know you're not allowed to smoke on Shabbos. Says, oh, it must be because you just can't hold yourself back from smoking on Shabbos. So he said, no. So he said, you should know, the reason why I'm smoking is because since the Rebbeinu Shalom told us not to smoke, I'm smoking. So Baditcheva said, you see, Rebbeinu Shalom, even the Averis that they do is for your sake only. They're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it for your sake only. That was the Sanega of Yisrael, the one who was the plaintiff for Klal Yisrael. Somebody smoking, he was down l'kapschus, that he's only thinking of the Rebbeinu Shalom on Shabbos when he smokes. So over here he says that if you're doing lahachis, it's problematic. However, umumu l'tayovin ein lechol mimatzah she'osu shaloi b'fnei Yisrael. And even if he's somebody who's a mumal, he can't hold himself back. He loves lobsters, and not that he doesn't want he doesn't want to do it because against the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's eating lobster because he can't. He's addicted to it. He has to have it. He loves it. You have to be careful about this. That these two classifications shouldn't bake your matzahs. Okay, we'll see this in Metchem tomorrow because we have to delve into it more tomorrow. But at the end of the day, we're going to see that these people, you come into a bakery, you get a little, how come they're the ones making the matzahs? At the end of the day, the kosher matzahs. Reb Chananya ben Akasha Amar Shabbat Zak Yisrael Lefika Chib Lem Torah Mitzvahs Shenema Adoyne Chofetz L'man Tzidko Yagdul Torah V'Yadir.